Because falling on hard times does not have to mean losing your home.
What's going on, world? It's your boy OG Mambo
and your guy D Money. Join us along with Pint Size Patron and ID Yourself
here on Fresh Juice at Rainier Avenue Radio
every Wednesday hump day from 9 to 11 Pacific.
Get exclusive interviews from your favorite artists, all the hottest music, and updates on what we got going on in the world.
That's every Wednesday, 9 to 11 p.m. on Seattle's Rainier Avenue Radio.
Greetings. This is your host, DJ Neftali, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, the best DJ in the Seattle area. You can catch me every Monday at 8 p.m. on YouTube. Like I said, this is DJ Neftali, the best reggae in Seattle, Washington, the best radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Mom, right?
If you or a family member are 55 or over and need nursing home level care, but want to keep living where you are, check out Providence Elder Place PACE. This program offers healthcare, housing, transportation, and recreational activities. There are no copays or deductibles, and it's covered through Medicare and Medicaid. Providence Elder Place PACE works to keep you healthy and in your home. Call 206-320-5325 or visit providence.org Elder Place. Providence.org Elder Place. Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow driver. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update.
You're listening to HeartBeat Radio. I'm your host, Cindi Bright. HeartBeat Radio is a conversation aimed to take the pulse of corporate America. Opportunities for people of color. We're getting lost in the shuffle of change. I'm that provocateur of change. The hearts of corporate America are addressed. Access and opportunities will be accelerated for all people. Through HeartBeat Radio, you will gain a deeper understanding of what is necessary for change.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to HeartBeat Radio and Podcast. I am your host, Cindi Bright. Thank you for being on with us tonight. We're excited about the show tonight. We'll tell you about it here in just a second because we have one of our esteemed people that we want to have talk with our community this evening about elections. Before I get to that, a couple things. One, I hope that everyone was able to see and get your friends and family registered to vote. Yesterday was National Voter Registration Day, so I'm hoping we have hit more people in the community and get more people out to the polls. I think we're under 50 days now from what we are referring to as Rovember, so we have to make sure everybody is there and getting their votes in. Second off, let me just acknowledge today is Black Women's Equal Pay Day. This is not about celebrating our equal pay. This is about a call to action that we are still making 53 cents to the dollar, and Black women are having to work 9 extra months to be able to make what the white male is making for comparable work. So we have to keep our foot on the pressure of that, the change and access for Black women for equal pay. And last but not least, I just wanted to acknowledge, I don't know if any of you have watched the movie The Woman King this past week. I posted, take your daughters to go see it. We got to get every woman out here seeing what our potential is, even despite the big backlash that has happened because of that movie's success. We predict that, but I just thought it was well worth mentioning. So that's how I'm kicking off the show tonight. We have our co-host Joy Stanford is back with us. She's been on a long vacation, so let's welcome Joy in with us. Hi, Joy. How are you this evening?
Good. Well, I hope they don't take that movie out because I have it on my list to go see. I've seen it, but I'm excited to go see it. So
yeah, it's pretty awesome. Very much, and I was very fortunate. I was able to watch it with a group of civic Black men leaders, and so to be able to sit in an environment where we are seeing Black women rise, fight, the power, these young girls that are in the movie. It's so inspirational. so inspirational. So
Good.
pretty cool.
Looking
I don't
forward
want
to it.
Yeah, you'll have to tell me what you think when you see it. I want to make sure we get, because I want to respect her time. I want our community to know. I want to welcome back to HeartBeat Radio. We do have the chair of the Washington State Democrats, the chair of the party, here with us this evening, Ms. Tina Podlodowski, who has been on HeartBeat before, and we're going to welcome her back because we're excited to hear some election updates from her. Let's welcome Tina back into the show here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with both of you. Thank you for what you both do on HeartBeat. You bring so much to the community. And I think single-handedly, you're going to make certain that everybody sees that particular movie. So I'm excited to take my daughter. Thank you.
Take your daughters. Yeah, your daughters will be inspired by it for sure. Yeah, very cool. Well, we really are excited when we have our top party leadership come on and talk to our community about, what's happening. And so we just kind of wanted to get an info dump from you on kind of the state of Washington,
Lay of the
and even
land.
at the national level, the lay of the land. What's going on, and what do we need to know? What does our community need to know?
Well, I think that everyone needs to know that it is 47 days now before it's election day, but ballots will drop in about 28 days. So everyone should be getting ready to vote here in Washington State. There is so much at stake here in Washington State, not just within our state, but also adding to the narrative nationally and the opportunities that we have to add to that particular narrative. I am more than happy to talk about specific races at the federal level, at the state level, at the legislative district level. Give me a sense of where you want to go with it, because everyone listening should know too that both Cindi and Joy have been candidates. They know that running for office takes incredible courage. They both have it. They have that courage. They have that grit. They have that opportunity to do it. They also know that it is the craziest job interview that you will ever go on in terms of being a candidate.
For the lowest amount of money ever.
Ever, I swear, ever. And it is unlike nothing else. I mean, all three of us have been candidates, so we know what that's like.
I don't think I have ever worked as hard as I did when I had a campaign to manage. It's so much more than what people know. I think where I'd like to start is let's start at the national level, because you just got back from committee meetings back in Washington, D.C. And I know we have a lot of our Congress people that are back up for re-election and running. So let's start at the national and help us to understand what you think. Yeah.
You bet. I just came back from the fall meeting of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. The DNC sort of charters all 57 and state and territory parties. And special shout out to everyone in Puerto Rico. If you can do something to help with Puerto Rico during this time, and there's a bunch of great donations. Jose Andres's World Kitchen is a great place to go as we're trying to get people fed. But going back and looking at those races, interesting things have happened, particularly since the Supreme Court decision around abortion, the Dobbs decision, and what has happened with female voters waking up to vote in the community, because this has been a tough several years for all of us. We were so excited when we won the presidency in 2020, but we were in the midst of a pandemic. We're still in the midst of dealing with supply chain issues, cost issues, impacts that we're having on families and workers in every single neighborhood, but particularly hitting neighborhoods that are neighborhoods of color, as well as young people, as well as our seniors. So all of that ends up being an issue. And I think for many folks, they were picking up that second job or doing the work to make sure they could take care of themselves and their family, and not necessarily following everything that was going on in DC. Well, the Dobbs decision from the Supreme Court, the anti-Roe decision, sort of woke folks up and woke women up in this particular sort of way to do this kind of work. Look at Kansas. Look at what happened in Kansas, where Republicans tried to enshrine a total ban on abortion into the state constitution. Women turned out, they registered to vote. At a 2-to-1 level, Kansas said no to making that happen. The special elections that have been happening since then in New York and other places have shown that pro-choice, pro-women, families making their own choices about their healthcare and their bodies, but women in particular, and such an issue in terms of your own autonomy and your own choice has really taken its toll in terms of Republicans thinking that they've got this, whether it's the Senate or the House. So right now, the Senate looks pretty good for Democrats moving forward. Nobody should take anything for granted. Everyone should vote. But in the Senate, we think great candidates like our own Patty Murray, who is up for re-election, has a great opportunity here against somebody who's anti-choice, super MAGA, and Tiffany Smiley, her opponent. But we're seeing great things happen in places like Wisconsin with Mandela Barnes, who could be the first Black senator from the state of Wisconsin, which would be amazing. Folks like Tim Ryan in Ohio, who's beating J.D. Vance, who's definitely a MAGA, sort of individual that's there. Sherry Beasley, African-American woman who was part of the Supreme Court in North Carolina, is dead even in that Senate race. And to me, that is the most important race to watch, because getting Sherry Beasley into the Senate would be amazing. She is so wonderful. She is so smart. She is so connected to all of the things that are happening in North Carolina, but also to women throughout this country. And especially when we have, Ketanji Brown Jackson now at the Supreme Court, electing this Black woman to this position would do a lot. And of course, in North Carolina and in the South. In Georgia, Raphael Warnock has a tough race in his reelection bid. Stacey Abrams still working on her gubernatorial bid. But in the Senate, we're looking pretty good in all of those different places. The biggest issue is going to be the House, and the House still looks like a toss-up all the way through. So that's why every single vote, everyone going out there and working for their candidates is incredibly important. Here in Washington State, we have 6 of our incumbents in great positions, folks like Pramila Jayapal and Marilyn Strickland. Kim Schreier in the 8th Congressional District, that is still a toss-up race, but we're working every day. That district was redrawn in redistricting. It is a 50.8 Democratic district. Oh, wow. I guess you could get a little closer, but that's pretty darn close. So we're working on that one. And then in Washington 3, we've got the biggest surprise. Marie Perez, Latinx woman, is running there. She and her husband own an auto body shop. They are working class champions. She's amazing in what she's able to do in terms of working in that particular district. She took a risk and jumped into the pack in the election in Washington 3 that had Jamie Herrera Butler down in Vancouver as the incumbent. Jamie was beaten by Joe Kent, who is a crazy MAGA Republican. And he is just so far out of touch with all of this. Matt Gaetz has come out to campaign for him and raise money for him. Trump has endorsed him a myriad of times. But that race is now sort of sitting, just neck and neck. There's 2 different polls that have come out recently. One had Marie sitting at 45% to Joe's 43%, with the rest of them undecided. Another poll just came out with Joe at 47%, Marie at 44%, with the rest of it undecided. So that is a distinct opportunity to just say no to somebody who's definitely a MAGA supporter, who will not support equal rights, civil rights, a woman's right to choose, the opportunity to make certain that we are doing things like reducing student debt even more and making certain that childcare and the childcare tax credits are back on the table for everyone and every family. So that's a lot of what's happening at the federal level.
That's awesome. I have been seeing Kim Schreier's ads all the time, so I know she's in a. I know. I figure she's probably battling, and I gag. I mean, it's whiskey that I have to take when the Tiffany Smiley ones come on, just to listen to her and her law.
Yesterday seemed like every other commercial was Tiffany Smiley. So I love that I see the primary ones too. So yeah.
They are spending a ton of money, and it's the Republican Party and Mitch McConnell. He handpicked Tiffany Smiley for that race. He is spending a ton of money out of his own PAC, out of the Republican PACs. And then they just spent another $4 million on TV ads. And we still have, 7 days to go. So you'll be seeing a lot of Tiffany Smiley on TV. And hopefully in 48 days, we won't be seeing a lot of Tiffany Smiley ever again. Although I do think she might have sort of Fox News punditry in her future. She's been appearing on Laura Ingraham a lot and a lot of those different things. So I think she's trying to carve that out for herself as well.
Are we, what's going on? One of the issues we are contending with, I'm part of the National Association for Black Journalists. And so I saw an email come out this week from the president of that about the fact that like CNN, because Don Lemon's spot has been, they're moving him to daytime now. And so he wrote a letter saying that the only Black journalist that we had on the airwaves was Joy Reid right now. And so are we at risk as Democrats to not have news outlets that are actually telling us the truth about these races and what's going on? Have you picked up or heard anything about that?
I was distressed at the move for Don Lemon, for sure, with that. I also think that it's incredibly important to make certain that it's not just TV journalists, but print journalists as well. I think that there's definitely a lack of Black voices all the way through the journalism spectrum that are elevated and in those particular positions and making those decisions. So, yeah, it is worth it to say something to CNN, if you're on there, folks are on there making comments all the time. Ask them that question. Ask them, what are you doing and what are you saying to show different points of view, and to also make certain that those different points of view are realized in a variety of ways.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, what do we do about the misinformation? We know that the commercials are coming out and we have folks saying certain things, but from a sandwich generation person, where I've got my mother who's in Wisconsin, who may not know that she needs to look up a certain fact that she heard on a commercial. How do we people to understand that a lot of times those talking points that certain candidates are saying, one, are not facts, and two, are just true lies? How do we get around this misinformation?
Right. It is so difficult to do that and to look at those different sorts of sources. So I think look at the different kinds of sources that are out there and they are factual. There's a couple of different websites that'll give you a sense of where different publications and channels lean and whether or not you can use them as a trusted source. Obviously, Fox News is not a trusted source. So yeah, I do have a dear friend in the Midwest who actually disabled Fox News on their parents' cable system. I am not advocating for that, but their parents were a little bit outraged. But then it made the point, they re-enabled it again to say, okay, let's look at something different for a minute, and maybe you'll realize that what's on Fox is not exactly what's there and truthful. But we have to carry that message. I think each and every one of us have to carry that message and talk to the people that we know. HeartBeat Radio is a great place to get, the real deal on all of this, but also make certain that we're just all talking to our friends and taking that step and making that happen. As you both know, we try to organize in that sort of way. Get out there and knock doors, do phone banking, do text banking, and all of these different races. We are going earlier on a variety of these different things, particularly with new voters here in Washington State. And we can talk about the legislative races too. Thanks to the work that was done by Democrats in getting automatic voter registration, we now have 750,000 new voters since automatic voter registration came into play. There's a group that's within there that's 18 to 22-year-olds who are voting for the first time. There are many folks from different communities who may have been purged from voting, particularly folks that have Latino, Hispanic surnames that had not voted in a couple of previous cycles. We found their names to be more frequently purged by the previous Republican Secretary of State than other folks. And then we have this interesting phenomenon that's happening, and that is folks who are moving from red states to Washington State. And they're not moving to Seattle and they're not moving to Spokane, but they're moving to, well, places like Bremerton and Gig Harbor. They're moving to places like Federal Way. They're moving to Kent. They're moving to Bellingham or the Skagit Valley or down in the Vancouver area, but more in the suburban aspects of Vancouver. They're moving to Yakima and Walla Walla and other places. So we're seeing a lot of folks who were Democrats in other places coming into Washington State and changing the game in some of the suburban, more rural districts that we've seen previously that had been hardcore sort of Republican districts. And now those are changing as well.
It's the remote work issue, right? The fact that a lot of people are able to stay apart. And so that is an interesting phenomenon, however you say it, to see what that trend's like. I wanted to mention something just because I think it will help people. It'll be eye-opening. I don't know if either of you have seen, it's like a 6-episode series called The Undeclared War. Have you seen that, either of you?
Yeah, it's great.
If any of our listeners, if you want to understand, like I didn't even get how, I don't even know what the word is, how this stuff is actually done to spread misinformation, but it's a great show that shows voter fraud and how the system is rigged and how all the fake stuff comes out. Like you have to see it, because when I saw that, I was like, my God, I had no idea they actually had warehouses full of people that literally sit there and pump this kind of stuff out and have these bots that just kind of push all this misinformation out. And if you're not aware or recognize that these are the kind of things that are done. And in this particular show, this is done, it's based in the year 2024. And you see how they take all of the brown and black people and they cheat their way. It's Putin's in it. Like, you just have to watch it because it's a phenomenal show to watch to gain deeper insight on misinformation and voter fraud.
I do want to take a moment, if I could, just to mention how important local journalism is, how important things like HeartBeat is, and that people should be out there and supporting and listening. I would be remiss to somebody who just passed away, an incredible leader in the Spokane community, Cindi Williams, the founder and editor of Black Lens in Spokane, was one of the folks who died in the tragic float plane crash that happened just a few weeks ago. And Cindi Williams, just an amazing activist and local journalist in founding Black Lens. She was an incredible storyteller as well. She was somebody that really, I think, helped us at the Democratic Party in terms of changing some of the players in Spokane and moving out some of the folks that had been a part of the party and who did not understand change, who did not understand the need for younger voices, for voices of color. The Carl Maxey Center is an incredible place there as well. So I just wanted to take that moment to remember Cindi and the work that she's done.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That is right. It is, our blessings do go out to her family, because what a tragedy. And your point is not lost. It's why people like me do what I do, is to try to keep this in front of community, because community, and look, I'll be honest, I get contacted by people who watch the show out of this state. I have been asked to bring HeartBeat into California. Like, people are like, how do we never get to hear from our elected officials. We never get to understand, like what you're explaining to our community, what's happening. People look at voter pamphlets. It looks like jargon. It doesn't help anybody to understand how to make an informed decision, but they can come here and listen to either our elected officials and or the candidates. We highlight candidates, a lot of the front runners and a lot of the underdogs, because we're trying to keep their voices out here, and so that people can understand who's in our community and who stands for what. So it is why we do what we do here.
You bet.
And it's amazing. It's running for office, because we ran for office and our voice wasn't heard, and people didn't know we were. So we were like, hey, we're here, we're running, and we understand that mentality of those candidates are like, how do I get my campaign out there? How do I let people know who I am, what I stand for? the truth around certain information and facts, and my platform that I'm running on. How do we get that out there? And this is the platform in which we can do it.
You bet. And it's so difficult to do it otherwise. I mean, in Washington State, it's really interesting. We just got some recent data in terms of television viewership of like broadcast TV and folks who are getting like their news and information from it. And Washington State ranks 49th in that. So a lot of money is spent on TV ads or broadcast news is something that should be pivoted to local newspapers, local channels like this, the opportunity to reach folks through digital, and then of course events, which was terrifically difficult during the pandemic to get folks out to different events, listening to different candidates and listening about their platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great vehicle. I mean, I'm glad to offer it to the candidates because it doesn't cost them anything to come on, and we can get them in front of a lot of doors with this show. That happened during COVID, where this became a huge vehicle for the people who were running for office, and we pushed this show. There's people who's actually watching right now as we're live. We push it into their districts where they're running so that their voters can see and hear from them. So it's an effective way and an efficient way to get them to their voters. There's no other, so yeah, we'll just continue plowing at this because this is a good vehicle for that. I do want to talk also about some of the local races too. Joy, did you have any more questions before we pivot to some of the local races?
Before we go, for me, it's about the state. We don't have a federal Washington conservation voters. We only have state PAC. So for me, what's the most important races that you're looking at? I should say most important because they're all important, but what's the races that you're watching? They are. I mean, all of our to win.
Right.
Because we know
right. And environmental justice is definitely at stake in this election cycle as we work through these things. So first of all is voting rights and making certain that we re-elect Steve Hobbs to the Secretary of State's office. He's the first member of the AAPI community ever elected to Secretary of State in Washington State. He's only the second person from the AAPI community to ever be a Secretary of State from the AAPI community. The first was a woman in California in the 1970s as an appointment as well. So that's an important voice just to make sure their voting rights are being upheld. But if you look at diverse candidates, we had a pretty good primary, and thinking about those districts, we always think about the 26th legislative district, right? That's one with Emily Randall, right, with Addison and with Matt Macklin, that we've got a tremendous opportunity. Addison Richards is 60. Emily Randall is doing great against Jesse Young. We want to make sure that she wins in that race. We need to keep her in the Senate. Addison Richards is ahead by 65 votes over the Republican, and then Matt Macklin, is just behind in doing that. So the 26th is a big district for us. The 30th is definitely a big district for us. The person that I want to make certain that we keep is the head of the Black Caucus, and that's Jamila Taylor. It is incredibly important that she is reelected to office. She's looking good in her race, as is Christine Reeves in returning her to the state House, and then Claire Wilson in the state Senate. And then the 47th legislative district is another one where it's going to be a very, very interesting race. Claudia Kaufman, a Native American running for the Senate. Claudia held that position a number of years ago as state Senate. She lost it to Joe Fain, a Republican man who then we beat with Mona Doss. And then now we're back with Claudia Kaufman as Mona decided to step down. But she's got a tough race against Bill Boyce in that particular race. Deborah Entenman, I think we want to make sure that she's there. And then we sort of have an embarrassment of riches and a place where the Republicans ran a whole bunch of candidates in the other House seat. And we have an opportunity with either Chris Stearns, who's Native American, or Shukri Olav, Black woman, immigrant, incredible candidates, both of them. Neither would be a loss to our community. But,
Right.
There's a tremendous opportunity to add there in those races as well. And
We're going to have to take a quick break, Tina, here in just a second. We're over. We're going to pick back up after. I do want to emphasize something you said before we go to break, because I want to make sure our community understands and hears this. When you talked about the 47th district, I want to be transparent and clear that the Republican that is voting or running in that seat, Bill Boyce, is a Black man who's running. And I want us as a community to not get skewed and off center by thinking that that is a Black person running and that's the person that we need to have in the seat. So I wanted to make sure I called that out. I've said that before. I've actually invited him here. He did not want to come on and talk to the people he said he wanted to represent. So I wanted to make sure that people understand that and know that, so that as they're looking at their pamphlets and they're Googling who the people are, he does have an R behind his name unapologetically. I am saying we need to steer away from that candidate and make sure we focus on Claudia for that particular seat. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll pick right back up. Tina, do you still have some time to stay on with us?
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll be right back.
That up the sacks, I favor Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yo.
I'm Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and this is my real voice. Honest, you're hearing it on Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Should have told her you were sorry.
You probably have questions about COVID vaccines. Here are some answers about how they're being made.
How are COVID vaccines being produced faster?
Usually, vaccine testing and production are separate steps. But because of the pandemic, vaccines are being developed on parallel tracks. So both steps are happening just at the same time.
How are the vaccines being tested?
Right now, several different COVID vaccines are in testing. Each go through multiple clinical trials with up to thousands of volunteers.
How do vaccines get approved?
Not all COVID vaccine versions will make it to the final stages of testing and approval. Produced vaccines that do not pass clinical trials will be destroyed. But for those that do pass, a team of medical experts will examine test results and possible side effects. If the vaccine is effective and safe, it gets approved and gets to you. Go to covidvaccinewa.org to learn more. A message from the state of Washington.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm Granville Emerson along with my partner, Ronald Pepe Bean. And we host the show Lidline Sports right here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, where we talk about football, basketball, local sports, national sports, Seahawks, UW, Seattle U Red Hawks, Garfield Bulldogs, all that and more right here on Lidline Sports on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Oh, we want to pump you up today. This is God Is, and we're doing a lot of different things in your community. We want to make sure we get in touch with each and every person that is. And so go to our Instagram, Facebook, tweet. We doing it all in your community. Go to our website also. Look us up, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Inspirational gospel music and also God Is Talk Show. Miss Dinah doing it all as we doing it right here on your favorite community radio station. So look us up. Go to our website. This is God Is, an inspirational gospel music.
Are you a small business owner in Seattle who was impacted by COVID-19? The Seattle Office of Economic Development is investing $8 million to connect small businesses to operating capital. The Small Business Capital Access Program will lower the cost of Washington State Small Business Flex Fund loans by paying down 25% of the loan principal. Eligible small businesses can borrow up to $150,000 with a 4% interest rate to cover expenses like payroll, rent, utilities, and supplies.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Don't forget to log on www.rainieravenueradio.world.
That up the sacks, I favor Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yo.
Welcome back to HeartBeat Radio and Podcast. I'm your host, Cindi Bright, along with a co-host back with us today. Joy Stanford's here, and along with the chair of the Washington State Democratic Party, Ms. Tina Podlodowski. I just loved having that first half update. I hope you all got to hear some really good information from her. She's so full of information from coast to coast, and then here at Washington State. Tina, I'll ask you about one other particular race, and that is in the, let's see, is it the 5th, the Spokane, where Natasha Hill, did you already talk about that particular race?
No. Talked about Natasha Hill yet, and it's interesting. We talked about the 3rd because of the unique opportunity there with such a MAGA Republican, Joe Kent, running against Marie Perez. In the 4th, we had Doug White, who did something that no Democrat has done since Jay Inslee represented that district, and that's get into the general election. He's up against Dan Newhouse, and Natasha Hill, who is absolutely incredible, an attorney in the Spokane area, is taking on Kathy McMorris Rogers in that particular race. She has terrific, I think, support within the Spokane area. What remains to be seen is what happens as you get into the more rural areas. And frankly, that rural area in Northeast Washington that is home to a lot of 3%ers, a lot of Proud Boys, a lot of folks that are about overthrowing our government, not fairly electing someone to government.
Yeah. What shocked me, though, was that she couldn't find a campaign manager, Natasha. Mm-hmm. That's what I had heard, that she couldn't find a campaign. I was like, what do you mean you can't find a campaign manager? You're running for a congressional seat. I thought maybe there'd be a lot of young people that be like clamoring to do that kind of work. So
we've been scrambling for people too, and this has been happening all around the country, which is many folks not necessarily wanting to take that political path, particularly after the COVID epidemic, and particularly given the situation that you're in. If you're a candidate of color or a person of color, or a young woman, or somebody from the LGBTQ community, there is a lot of hatred that's out there. There is a lot of personal risk. You both faced that on the campaign trail. There was a great article in the Washington Post recently talking about what happened with Pramila Jayapal, with the person who was at her home with a gun threatening, all of those different things. What's happened on the campaign trail, particularly to April Berg in the 44th district. We have gone out as a state party, and we're holding special trainings as well for both campaign candidates as well as campaign staffers and any key volunteers in dealing with these kinds of situations. We'll buy anyone personal protection devices, either, sprays or those loud, alarms or whatever they want to do with that. But it's incredibly daunting in the what we're seeing that MAGA Republicans led by Donald Trump, say about people, unleash about people, unleash racism and sexism, homophobia and transphobia and so many other different things, and make this situation incredibly volatile and in some cases violent.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Definitely. I saw today. I'm trying to have some hope that justice will be served and they will put that. I have to re-say the word.
Whoa.
The person. It sounds like that the Department of Justice was able to have a victory today with Trump's request for whatever. I mean, what do you hear on the street? I mean, can we get this idiot locked up before so that he's not?
Well, it's kind of ironic because Trump was, they went in with the Department of Justice to Mar-a-Lago, got the files that were there, that were all classified files, that were nuclear secret files, for heaven's sakes. He demanded a special master. They let him have a special master. The special master came in and said, you get to use these files. You have to either say why you declassified them or how you declassified them. You haven't said a thing about that, so they can go ahead and use this. And so that was a big victory. But let's give it up for Letitia James,
yes.
Attorney General. Oh my gosh. She just blew up the Trumps and all of their business in civil court, where she brought in Trump and his entire set of family businesses and family members by fraud and fraudulently overvaluing his assets by billions of dollars. And she's looking to make certain they can never do business in the state of Washington again, and that they have to do so much to repay their fraudulent actions. So they kind of got Al Capone on tax evasion, right? Maybe that's how we get Donald Trump. And I would not mess with Letitia James. Oh my gosh.
No.
Absolutely amazing.
She is a badass. I don't care what anybody says, she is a badass.
Yeah.
I mean, we've continued to say this, not just because we are Black women, and mostly because we just know what we're capable of. We want to save the democracy in this country. We got to get Black women elected, like just unafraid to take on these people. Like we live in a society around these folks where they're just trying to destroy us every single day. And so all of us are swinging, like we're just done with. So I know she is amazing. I was just breakdancing when I saw what she's up to. He's going to, the karma in his family lineage for generations to come is going to be something else, because he's just created so much harm. I mean, lying and criminal. And the fact that we can't get these folks locked up. I mean, we even have, what's the guy's name in Florida? Human trafficking.
DeSantis, yes.
DeSantis.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unbelievable that it's 2022 and these people are still walking the streets and getting away with this stuff.
Justice moves slowly, and justice doesn't, it gets there, but it moves incredibly slowly. To me, that's why, and both of you have said this, particularly in state legislatures, you need to have Black women, Black men elected to these offices because they're consistently underrepresented, particularly in Western states. So when you have folks like a Jamila Taylor, when you have an April Berg or a Brandy Donahue or a Melody Morgan or a John Lovick, or other folks that you can elect in these different races, it is incredibly important for everyone to be supporting those individuals and bringing those voices and that diversity to the state legislature. The state legislature doesn't work if it looks like the Republican caucus, which, with the exception of 2 members of their caucus, are all, white guys 55 plus who do not represent the people of the state of Washington in any way. And especially since you were talking about pay equity, particularly pay equity for Black women, and today in this, it's like, look at what's happening. If you don't have those voices there, nobody's talking about what impacts women, childcare, what impacts women in terms of looking at debt and all these other components of it, what impacts women with working conditions and being able to take care of families, what impacts women in terms of healthcare. Because generally within a family, it's a woman who's taking care of all of those different things. So what are we doing to make certain that we are empowering women to be able to do all of this different work, but also for our Black women, for our Latinx women, for our AAI women, what are we doing to make sure that their voices are out there leading legislatively as well in these elected offices?
Tina,
go ahead, Joy.
Tina, you just came back from the AAT&I conference in Wenatchee. What's the state party doing? I mean, I know Emerge is really doing some deep thinking around trying to get more Native female candidates out there. We had 5 or 6 during the primary. Now in the general, we've got 2 or 3 that are still in there. But I think there are I've met some pretty incredible Native women, which now works for Washington Conservation Voters, who have aspirations of running for something just like Cindi and I did. What's the state party? What tactics or strategies are you guys thinking of? Maybe we can do this together, but we've got to because the history of the state is so rich with Native American history, and they were here first, and then we are on stolen land. How can we get their voices heard more? Not only just locally at the local level, but at the state level, and then moving on to congressional level.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's a partnership for sure in making this happen. I think that what we've tried to do over the course of the last 6 years is really build those relationships with the 29 sovereign nations, 29 tribes here in Washington state, and help in terms of their Native vote efforts. Over the course of the last year, or 6 years really, we've been able to raise turnout in diverse Native communities almost 40%. So that means, but there's so much more work to be done. So let's just take that as a point in time, not as that's a point on the continuum. I guess celebrate it for a moment. But for me, all that means is, okay, people understand and have a better sense of why they should care, as opposed to just caring about tribal elections, tribal politics, and those different issues. So that's one big piece. Our Native American caucus for the state is the largest state Native American caucus in the country. But I think what we were lacking was something that I do think Washington Conservation Voters is putting together in terms of the Native vote component of this.
That's
and
right.
the powers and resources that can get into that. And that was a big part of the discussion at the Native Vote panel at ATNI, was how do we work together to be able to do the training, not just for candidates, because I would always say, particularly to female candidates, just go to Emerge. Emerge is the best. You get an incredible network. Do it. Do it. Whatever it takes, just do it. But how do we build to make certain that there's a Native Vote coordinator in every tribal entity, and that's a year-round position?
Yeah.
How do we train young people in tribes to be campaign managers and do that piece of work? And we've been missing those things, I think. So it's not just one entity that can solve the problem, it's many. And I do think you're starting to see, depending upon the tribes, the Lummi do this really well, the Colville do it pretty well, Muckleshoot, the Puyallup tribe, the Tulalip tribe, in terms of their gatherings and how they're getting people more and more engaged.
Awesome.
To an extension of that question, I guess, then, that comes to mind when you guys are talking about that is, for the Native community and as Joy said, we all know we're all living on stolen land. What, if any, is the state of Washington doing around, the conversation around reparations? And let me just expand that a little bit more, because we also have, I'm going to call it, in the social equity space, all of the, businesses, Black men who've been locked up in prison for marijuana, and now it's legal. What are we doing? What is the state of Washington doing to try to reconcile reparations for our, brown and Black communities? And the second part of that question is, we see the money that's coming in from the state for community reinvestment, Black business, but the delta is so deep. What's the talk about how we're going to start to reconcile some of this stuff before we're all buried and dead?
Right. I think the overall answer to your question is not enough. And this is not just Washington State. I think it's every state. I also think it's the national government. I think that's the bottom line. The debt is huge. The debt is huge. And the way that any aspects of the debt have ever been covered has been in dribs and drabs. And that's not how you pay off a debt to make that happen. So I do think it makes the difference to have diverse legislators in there, honestly, working on these different pieces, to have to add like a Claudia Kaufman, for example, to Deb Lakenhoff's efforts, who's just been the only woman, Native American woman in either the state house or the state senate, add that kind of voice and that sort of understanding, adding folks who will fight for that and continue to fight for that and will stand for that, because there's a lot of status quo that doesn't want that to happen. There's a lot. I mean, Cindi, you've talked about it in your book, your lectures, in terms of corporate America around these different places and spaces. And the bottom line is it's simply not enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the more we elect the type of leaders that we're electing, the Jamila Taylors, the Melanie Morgans, the Deborah Lakhanoffs, they are putting up policies that affect those communities and affect in a positive way,
right?
And then bring reparations, because they're saying, we're not going to stand for this anymore. Here's the solution to the problems that are affecting this community. And I love seeing that. And I love seeing the bills that so many of these, they're not new leaders anymore. The April Bergs and the Jamila Taylors of the world, they're not new anymore. But those representatives are bringing forth policies and bills that directly affect so many Washingtonians.
As our white electeds, because I saw that
Emily, we're allies.
Emily,
we're allies.
sponsored the cannabis. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a very big deal
Yeah.
that one get dealt with, that we are able to license more Black folks that have those cannabis licenses and be able to stand up. That is a huge step. I hope, one of my questions tonight was, do you have a sense on the agenda for 23 legislative session, and will it include some of these areas that we're talking about today?
I believe that it will, but I don't think that any decisions will be made until after Election Day. What'll happen at the beginning of December is something called committee days, where you'll see elected officials come in and they'll start to set the agenda in those different areas. I think somebody who also, as a white ally, who's looking at our upside down tax system. Is Noelle Frame, who's moving from the state house to the state senate. This is her life's work, frankly, to fix that upside down tax code as well and get wealthy, disproportionately white, and disproportional spread of income is there to be paying fair share and making that happen. I also want to put a plug in for local elected officials too, and especially for county governments. This, we've worked really hard in the last 6 years at the state party to make changes in the party and grow it. It's not grown anywhere near as fast as I would have liked, but county governments have to be the next piece of this. Yeah. And a couple great things are happening. For example, in Spokane has now gone in Spokane County from electing countywide, whereas you would never get diverse candidates able to win. You're now running in districts. You've got 5 districts in Spokane. There are 2 Democratic districts, 2 Republican districts, and 1 toss-up district. And a young woman by the name of Maggie Yates it has come out on top in that district. There were 2 Republicans running in that district. One is an old-timer, Al French, who's been there a long time, hasn't done much of anything. The other Republican endorsed Maggie and said, we've got to do something better here in Spokane County for folks. We have great candidates running in Yakima County, where for the first time they're running in districts as well. In this next election cycle, places like Walla Walla County, for example, will run in districts too. So we need to be able to make certain that we're doing that and doing that in a lot of different communities, because those county governments have a lot to do with contracting, with purchasing, with making certain that folks are getting their fair share of government business to begin with, but thinking about things like land use and how that happens, how we're doing the work for restoration, how we're working with Black farmers, for example, throughout the state of Washington, or Latino farmers throughout the state of Washington, who historically have not been, part of these huge, white-owned farming cooperatives that have taken over a lot of these businesses. I think is super important.
I think it's I think this is great, and I'm a couple things. One is, we always tell our audience after Election Day, we give ourselves about a week, and then we got to get to work on the local races, like what you're talking about. And I think, in BIPOC communities, that we have to really pay attention to our school boards. Yep. We have a huge failure of public education. I don't care what anybody says. It's failing our children. And so we got to start paying attention to and trying to get people onto these, into these seats. All of the things you're talking about, that, the land use, these are all, people are like, the general public doesn't know. That's why we like to bring people like you on to help people to understand the power is in the local races. Right. And so we can get folks mobilized and positions identified where we need changes. And who we need to unseat. I don't know who would be comfortable coming on air to talk with us about it, but we need to unseat, including some of these Democrats that don't discuss our agendas. And so maybe before you go to session, we'll talk about doing a show later this year on who that is, because we've got to get our communities identify who the people are so we can get them trained. And, I saw the Emerge application is out. I think that November 23rd. We need to get our people signed up and into these programs so that they know that they can hold office. So Joy, we'll have to do some due diligence after elections. And
I think that's a great idea. I think the Republicans do a really good job on scooting these people into those local offices. So you're talking PUDs, you're talking school boards, county councils, those low and I hate to use the word low, but just not the state level positions, but they start there, and it's insidious to me because I think they start there and they make changes that don't help anyone in the community, and then they move on. They just crap on it and then move on to the next best thing. And so we've got to start getting some of our folks in there, the people that really care about it. And there's so many great volunteers within all these communities. I mean, WCV has great volunteers. The state party has great volunteers. People come out when you come, Tina. I saw it right here in the 26th. People come out when you come. It's like, those are the folks that we need to be encouraging. You could take one step further and actually run for office, and not at the state level, but at the local level, your school boards, your
we need to help. Like I saw it very clear during this last, through the primaries, the people that were trying, but they don't have direction. So like, for example, in the 30th, where we had Pastor Kerry, I mean, he put his name in it, and then he did, I mean, his campaign reminded me a lot of mine. I mean, when you're not, I didn't go through the Emerge program. I mean, shit fell in my lap that I was going to run. And so when you're trying to figure your way through all of that, you don't know how to get yourself aligned in the party. You don't know how to find who the people are that can help you. You don't know how to find campaign managers, good ones, I should say. I think the good ones are all taken pretty quickly because our elected officials who are already in office tap those resources. So we've got to figure out a way. Maybe Emerge does that, Joy? Do they?
No, we do not. And we do not. We don't necessarily train campaign managers, but some of the women who take our training do move into those positions, and then 1 or 2 years later run again. Go ahead, Tina.
I think some of it is trying to figure out how to coordinate it so that we train particularly young folks to be great campaign managers. And when there's a year where they might not be running a particular race, that we can put in one of our nonprofits or one of our organizations so that they have a job. That is the hardest part.
We know. We know.
Yeah.
We definitely know, because I didn't have a job after I ran for office.
Yeah, Joy at least had a husband. I didn't even have anybody to feed me. I just like.
And this is something we've talked about with, for example, with union allies. Can they go out and be union organizers during that time?
Right.
Work at the legislature as a legislative aide? Can you know, as a second aide in a particular office? Can they do these other things? Because it's important for me to make certain that folks can make a living wage. Look. As a state party, we're one of the few state parties in the country that's unionized. You know, we're proud to be a union shop. We pay more than most every state party in the country. Everybody gets full benefits. We do that work because it's hard work, and nobody should be, working 80 hours a week for $3,000 a month, which is generally what happens in campaigns and what we ask people to do. And that's also not how you retain and get diverse folks in these different jobs as well. It's important for us to do that.
Daniel, we've just got a couple of minutes left. Put that comment back up that just came in about the
good ones charge considerable funds that grassroots candidates cannot.
That is a fact.
Sometimes.
Marnie is actually out of the Bay Area. I don't know if they have down there what the city of Seattle has, at least the voucher program to try to help with some of that. But it is a good point that, because again, I was a grassroots person, and you know who I ran against, and she's actually my friend now, but I mean, she had access to a shit ton of money and I didn't, right? So how do you balance that out, and how do you, these are all the kind of things that we've got to try to solve for it so that we can start getting more candidates and more people in. And to your point, Tina, nobody can afford, $3,000 doesn't even pay rent in this area. So it's a huge, I knew this was going to be a fast hour. Thank you for coming back on with us and helping our constituents to hear and see and know what's going on. We know you're doing a great job there. We know there's still a lot of work to be done. We so appreciate you taking the time to give the community this sorts of information. To our audience who joined today, I see a lot of comments in the feed section. Thank you for joining and listening. please share this video.
Yes.
Put this out to your constituents in your Facebook groups. Get people to understand we need them to vote. The ballots are dropping in 30-something days. Every state that's listening in, the people, California is here. I know Idaho is on here. Make sure we get people to the votes. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you again.
That up in Saks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black.